So, please welcome Caitlin Monahan, the editor-in-chief of Hypebae, together in conversation with Luisa Dames, the founder and CEO of Aeyde.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. I'll just do a bit more details on quick intros before we get into the questions, but very, very happy to be here. Again, my name is Caitlin Monahan, and I am a strategist, trend forecaster, and the editor-in-chief of global fashion platform Hypebae. And today I have the privilege of speaking with the brains behind a footwear and accessories label that Hypebae has frequently covered for its beautiful contemporary silhouettes, its succinct visual identity, and its dedication to sustainable design. Luisa Dames, the founder and CEO of Aeyde, created the brand with a clear point of view on modern luxury, one that's quieter, more thoughtful, and most of all, built to last. Since launching in 2015, Luisa continues to challenge how we think about luxury, design, and everyday style, keeping a close eye on near-future consumer mindsets and always championing the Aeyde woman along the way. Luisa?
Hi, everyone. And thank you, Kat, for doing this interview with me live on stage. I don't have any paper in my hands, so I hope to answer everything.
Great. Perfect. So I think we can start from the beginning-ish.
Yeah.
So before, in your previous chapter in your career, you were in fashion e-commerce. So I wonder, when was the moment you felt it was right to start a brand, and what did you learn within your experience in fashion e-com that helped to support the origins of the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here on stage in such a beautiful format. I think the team has prepped this super nicely. So maybe before we start, I never studied fashion in the first place, right? So I studied economics and culture, which was a hybrid degree between, the business side, but then also the cultural side. And I, at the beginning, didn't know what to do with it when I finished my degree. And I started in a consulting firm at the very beginning. And after half a year, I realized it's not for me. That was back in the days in Milan. So I was living in Milan, working in this consulting company, and realized that's not what I like, but Milan I loved, and I had so many friends in fashion at the time, so that I always privately engaged after work, during sort of like my free time, and I got a glimpse into the fashion industry at the time. And very early on, I think I was maybe 24 years old, I decided I want to work in the fashion industry, and kind of laid the foundation super early. And then joined a big e-commerce retailer, and that was really in 2009 when e-commerce was born. So we, together with the teams, were building what today is Zalando, so really big e-commerce player. And I was hired as a business developer, started really super junior from an intern, first roles, worked my way up, and started when the company had 100 employees, and I left when we were 14,000 employees, and I was in my later stage heading up all the private labels for women and men apparel, so I was really dealing with where to source from, how to create a product, how to design a product, how do we get the best prices for the product, and working with all the design teams, the merchandising teams, the commercial teams, the financial functions, so really touched on all elements. And after 4.5 years that I've done this huge build-up at that company, I kind of felt ready to start my own brand.
Amazing. Speaking of sourcing and materials and team building and the kind of operational side of things, you told me earlier that having a brand, only 5% is really about the designing of the collection. So would love to talk about that other 95%. What are the key elements to a successful brand, and particularly elements that could be helpful to designers or people that are just starting out in the industry?
So I think I always say that, like, 5% is really the design job, but obviously there's many more things. I think it always starts with a trend element, which I think also you have strongly as a career path. I think that's for me the most interesting. Where is a cultural trend leading us towards? So what do I see maybe in 1 or 1.5 years from now will be relevant, and how to sort of like incorporate this into a brand's universe, right? So before I start a collection, I'm doing tons of research. So my teams, they serve me social media insights. They sort of like prepare sort of like trend reports on runway shows. I'm basically seeing everything, and I want to see everything. And if I haven't seen everything, I go back to my teams. I'm like, okay, we need the research. So there's lots of research that is needed to build collections, to build good collections. And it's not just about a personal taste or sort of like a personal liking. I design for so many women worldwide that I have to be super aware of what potentially they might like in a year or 1.5 years from now. And then I think it's a lot about saying no when you want to really build a brand, because you get carried away quite quickly in the process. It's being very strict to yourself, and often you need to say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's maybe for a different brand and not for us. So you push away things that you maybe see. So that has to do with the filtering, etc. But then building a brand as such, there's the design part, the trend part, there's the production part, the sampling part. There is the financial part in a brand, which I think often gets forgotten, right? Because obviously at some point you need to pay your factories, you need to kind of like adhere to the fashion calendar. Planning is super, super important if you want to step into the brand or even the retail game. A season is quite quick. It only has 5 to 6 months, and then the season is over and you have to kind of like start the next season. So planning, timeline, financial operations. So an idea is there, and then you have to build everything around it. And that's what I mean often when I say, okay, 5% is design or this idea, and then the operational teams have to kind of like really make sure that eventually at some point we're selling something in Paris to many of our wholesale partners or retail doors.
Yeah, it seems like one of the also key skill sets, to your point, is about the boundary setting.
Yeah.
So it's almost more difficult to say no and reduce and refine and laser focus, as opposed to making it bigger and more and more and more. And I know that we'll talk
it's the hardest.
Yeah. I think sticking within the train of thought of the universe of a brand, a lot of the brand building is world building, and a lot of that comes up with visual identity, right? So the campaign imagery and everything else. So talk us through your kind of visual identity and the narratives that you weave through your campaigns.
Yeah, especially as a shoe brand, it's extremely hard because you don't have the clothing, right? So at the beginning, when I started, I was obviously concerned with how do I build an image of a brand that is a shoe. So you usually don't see a face, you just have the product. And so we carefully really dissected the elements of how is an image built, right? And it starts obviously with a story. So before I start a collection, I review the trends, then I decide, okay, what would we want to do for next season? And then I usually define one topic. So in this season, we've just launched it last week, is Aeyde Dreams in the summer collection, for example. Prior to that, we had this super strong theme named Aeyde Hexe. So we always take one theme, and then along those lines, we are creating the collections, then also the imagery to it, the campaign storytelling to it. And I think there's many different pillars because you have the e-commerce content, the lookbook content, you have sort of like campaign content, and all of these levels have to, as a holistic kind of like package, make sense together, because obviously it's super hard. You shoot with different photographers, you have different stylists that work for you, you have different creative elements that you have to brief in under one umbrella so that everybody walks into the same direction. That has lots to do with creative direction at the end of the day, so that you are very crystal clear in what do you want to achieve and with whom can you work in a season or on an image base, so that you can really achieve what you actually plan to achieve.
Interesting. I'm curious, do you have, from any of the campaigns that you've done in the past 11 years, does one stand out to you in terms of being your favorite visually, like really spoke to the brand or to the word or specificity of the collection?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, it's very hard to look back. That's something I often I'm very hesitant to do that, right? Because in fashion, you're always forward. You're always a year ahead compared to everybody else in terms of your trend absorption. You're designing the collection. I'm right now designing SS27, so next year's summer collection. So I need to assume right now what might be the trend next year. So for me, I'm always looking ahead, and we've just launched the spring-summer collection with Dreams, Aeyde Dreams. There will be 3 chapters in this campaign, and to date, it's one of my favorite collections or favorite campaigns, and I can only always improve from next to the next. So it's very hard for me to comment on what has been our best or, I think many milestones kind of. Yeah,
absolutely. It's probably like picking a favorite child or something.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do that.
They're all so different. Great. So would love to talk a little bit more about your kind of founding pillar of democratizing modern design. And with an industry that is kind of full of exclusivity at times or price markups at times, how do you kind of distill that luxury sentiment, that luxury feel, luxury quality, while still being, accessible to maybe an everyday style or consumer?
I think it's the definition of luxury, right? I think there's in the industry a lot of debate. What does luxury actually mean? And to me, it's really the quality. It all comes down to a high quality product. And I think that's also what my job is. My job as a brand is to deliver the best quality under a certain sort of like price frame that I set to the brand. And obviously we have to take care on how's our margin, how's everything calculated. It's not easy to run the production. Sustainability is a huge part of, our leather sourcing, for example. And at the end of the day, I think this term luxury kind of is almost like worth to redefine or maybe reshape in the next maybe a few years ahead, because I think it's often confused with branding. And I think that's kind of like an interesting one to explore if you look at the actual quality and or what a brand does to a certain level of quality. I think that's quite a nice one. Probably a separate panel needed.
I would love to go back to your note about trends, because I think it's an interesting one that I'm sure every brand is kind of thinking about at some level. And it also kind of goes back to the sentiment around saying no. So I wonder, with all of the kind of trend forecasting and research that you're developing around or to better inform your decision making around product, when do you feel like it is the right moment to bring maybe a trend or aesthetic or something that's happening in, and when do you feel like you can kind of pass on it? Because trend cycles are moving, as we know, so rapidly that I imagine it is quite difficult to discern in real time. All right, let's run it. It makes sense for us, or maybe we'll give it a pass.
I think especially in the past, let's say 10 years, the entire digital world has been created. Basically, when I started in 2015, Instagram was still a photo platform. Pinterest was the platform that everybody used for research at the time. And this has obviously completely changed with all the social media platforms being so quick and so trend adaptive, and they actually fuel trends. They even sort of like bring trends to only certain communities or certain audiences. So I think that element has gone faster and faster and faster, whilst the collection building side is slow, right? So it still takes me a year. So that hasn't improved. So it still takes a year to go through sampling, etc. So when I look at sort of like the trends that are out there, and just to give you an example, the past few seasons we monitored, there's a sneaker trend lingering around for more elevated or elegant sneakers opposed to sort of like the very boxy, bulky sneaker trend that was there for a long, long time. So we looked at this trend and we saw it. Miu Miu was one of the brands that sort of like stood out there in leading this trend. And so we debated this for quite some time. Is this something for Aeyde? Yes, no. We haven't done sneakers in 10 years. So maybe something we want to do. And I think to me, it's very important that a trend really fits into a brand universe. So you then have to find your own way of how you, for example, tackle the sneaker as a trend. We note this, but how would it look like for a brand like Aeyde, right? So that our customer that we have built up over many, many years would not be like, well, what are they doing right now? It's weird. So I think it's more like you want to take your customer on a journey. You want to sort of like really build this into your own brand DNA.
Right. Yeah. It goes back to the note about built to last. And
exactly.
If you drop something randomly, does it feel off?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's, the pace, the longevity of it all is where it starts to make sense. On the topic of sneakers, amazing that you've brought, this debut product offering into your world. What was the most surprising part about creating a sneaker for Aeyde?
Yeah, so the sneaker hasn't launched yet. It will launch on the 15th of February. It will be the first Aeyde sneaker, and we've never done something like this. For me, it was very important that in the brand we have an underlying theme, which is duality. We always juxtapose two different things, right? So either it's if something is very feminine, we need to make sure that the imagery looks more masculine. If something is more masculine, we make sure that there's a softness to it as well. So to kind of like really create this essence. So for me, a sneaker was very important that we meet the elegance that Aeyde has and sort of like incorporate this into the sneaker. So the final product will be revealed soon. Let's see how the reaction is. It's the first time we have really a brand new category in that sense.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Speaking on that duality, the brand is also quite heavily celebrated for the juxtaposition between masculine and feminine. So in keeping that in mind, how do you feel those are both materialized through in your silhouettes?
Yeah. So I think it's also part of our entire brand DNA, right? So when we started the brand, we, in the first place, I couldn't in words describe what I'm doing, right? And it took many, many sort of like discussions and observations in the brand. Okay, what is this that builds the recipe, right? And I think we came to this word of duality because it's neither nor, kind of. It's neither too masculine nor too feminine. It's neither too edgy nor too soft or round. So I think it's about the combinations, which is also something, if I look into this more German design landscape, Bauhaus has been a huge movement on the architecture side, and they play with forms. And I found this quite interesting, especially on the shoe side, because every shoe starts with a last and a heel, and this creates this form, and you can change millimeters and the entire shoe looks like a different shoe. And I found this quite fascinating in terms of form language. So we played a lot in that, how do we combine a round heel maybe with like a more edgy front part, or do we do that or we don't do that? So I think it's about the decision in the end. So you need to be quite firm in your decision. Because what doesn't work if you're loose in your design language, or you, hey, I want to try out this today and that tomorrow, that doesn't work. You need to be super, almost like, how can you say, very strict eventually. And sometimes I get this question from my team, but Lou, can we not do this? This is a super cool trend. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. They can do it, but not for us. So I think it's very much know yourself, kind of. Yeah.
Definitely.
And
How many do you feel like there was multiple kind of beta iterations of the sneaker before it found its final form, or was it just maybe
No,
few?
so we had one of our core shapes is the Uma ballerina, which is based on, and that is a very simple ballerina shape. And we said, okay, for us, it would make sense if the sneaker is quite close to a ballerina sneaker. Yeah. So, and then this form almost naturally developed. But I couldn't have done it, let's say, 5 years earlier because this shape wasn't there yet. So I think it has to make sense also in your own how you build collections. Like one builds up on the next collection, so they are super interlinked if you look at the assortment a bit more intense. And I see this also with other brands when I look at them. It's a development, right? You start somewhere and you just get better over time. And I think for everybody that is young and wants to start a brand, I think it's don't give up or something like this. It's like it's a development. One step happens after the other step, and one builds up on the other step as well.
Great.
Yeah.
I've learned, don't give up. Say no.
Yep.
And know yourself.
Yeah.
Final question for you. What are you looking forward to in the year ahead?
So now that we're moving into the year of the horse, it's better than the year of the snake. I think we had quite a turbulent year last year in terms of obviously Trump raising tariffs. It put a lot of pressure on brands that distribute globally. So we had lots to do on the commercial side. So I hope now these things are more settled and retail can find like a new way for the future. So I hope that they figure it out. And then I'm super much looking forward what AI can do in terms of the communication side of things. I think it's fascinating how you can integrate this into your design process. The other day we played a little bit with Nano Banana, and it was just mind-blowing what this could kind of like do to your creative processes, but also to your research, to sort of like inform what you do. And that's what I find super interesting for the next step.
Definitely. That sounds like a whole other interview for us next season. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here to listen in.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat.